Good evening.
Jordan, how you doing tonight, buddy?
Dan, I am.
A little tired?
I'm sorry. I have to laugh because and you have to forgive me beforehand. I am going to try my absolute best to stay calm, cool, and collected. You know how much Tevin Jenkins means to me as a player. No alcohol involved. I'm drinking just pineapple juice, but I tell you because people are gonna be like, "Is he drunk?" No, I'm just really upset about this whole scenario. So I will try to stay cool, calm, and collected, but I am.
You
Upset.
don't have to. I might join you in not being cool, calm, and collected.
How
This
are you though?
news, I'm great. I'm doing excellent, man. I really appreciate you coming on here and joining me tonight. This is an honor to have you on here. You know, it's been a pleasure working with you on Bare Necessities and just kind of do some, some cross pollinating here. Have you come on my show and kind of you get to be on my broadcast and kind of follow my lead this time. So it's kind of fun.
Yeah, I'll be your Huckleberry. I'm looking forward to it. This is fun.
Oh gosh, I don't like this news today about Tevin Jenkins, and from what I've read, from what I've heard, it's that the Bears have been contacted about Tevin Jenkins, a Tevin Jenkins trade. I'm not sure if that's just the reporting of it, or if the Bears put it out there for a trade, and this is just the response that we're getting from it. I mean, what do you think about that?
I mean, here's the reality: is that it's such a layered conversation with a ton of perspective and context that are needed regarding the entire scenario. But let's just kind of start at the beginning, try to break it down. I think on the surface, let's be clear. I know that a lot of people had concerns about David Kaplan and what he was reporting and the verification of legitimacy of it. That's fine. You can have those feelings. I think that at this point, though, it's only fair to give the man some credit. When you see Ian Rappaport and Mike Garafolo of NFL Network coming out, they don't put their name on something unless they can confirm it through three or four levels. So when you're seeing Ian Rappaport and Mike Garafolo talking about that, a couple things. Certainly, when there's smoke, there's fire. I think that I don't want to say we're going to for sure see Tevin traded, but I'd say it's much more likely now than not. But however, to be clear, the tweet, and if you want to pull it up, shorty, we can, but the language was something of the sense that calls have been received. Look, the phone line should always stay open. I don't care who your GM is. You can have Patrick Mahomes. The phone lines should always stay open to hear any offers.
Of course.
And so the the calls were received. Phone lines are open. That's not a big red flag. The red flag of any of them, if you will, in the comment from Ian Rappaport was that there are trade talks that were had. Now that's interesting because, I mean, again, I don't want to totally besmirch Ryan Poles here. The reality is that if somebody's calling, it's in your best interest to at least hear them out. And if the call is something as simple as, "Hey, Tevin Jenkins, is he on the block?" I mean, could be. What did you have in mind?
Right.
My duty, my obligation is to listen and say, what did you have up in offer? And let me hear that. Therefore, the moment that you decide to say, I'll give you a seventh, trade talks have now been had.
Exactly. That's exactly true. So, I mean, it doesn't mean that he's necessarily on the trade block. It just means that since the negotiations have been started, there's where the reporting comes from. So, oh man, like you said, where there's smoke, there's fire. It's kind of like, why are they reaching out to try to ask the Bears if he's even available for trade? Is it because insider information that we don't know? Obviously, Eberflus came out and said he's not disclosing injuries, and he wouldn't talk about Tevin Jenkins just as much as he wouldn't talk about anybody else. But the fact that he's not out there probably started to get the calls going to the Bears for him, right? Because they're
sure.
I think everyone's kind of speculating the same thing, like what is going on with this kid? So why don't we just give him a call and see what's going on with Tevin and see if they're maybe interested in trading him?
Well, and I see Steve's asking a question here, and Steve, I'll get to you in just a second here. But I mean, that's really part of the issue here, Dad, is that I know nobody wants to hear this. And look, I promise I wasn't trying to bring the doom and gloom, but if they called about Justin Fields and somebody was willing to offer 3 first-round picks, I'd tell them to ship off Justin Fields today. I mean, this is the reality: is when you have nobody wants to face this. when you bring in a new regime, they are always going to listen to
course.
offers on players they did not pick. There is zero investment.
Right.
This is why the Bears are dysfunctional. This is why you have an issue. When you decided, and I'm very happy Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy are gone. But then you do not let them select players and then kick them out the door the next year, especially in Tevin's a smaller piece, but the Justin Fields one, for example, telling people right now, if Justin Fields has a bad year, and we're going to talk about this, I know you're very high on Justin Fields. I'm willing to converse about that. But if he has a bad year, do not be surprised when they had no ties to him. You bring in two people, and they get the benefit of the doubt as if Justin Fields hits, woohoo, we got our guy, no problem. But if Justin Fields fails, I always have the excuse in my back pocket that, look, George, wasn't my guy. It's only right that you do fair by me and you let me pick my quarterback to lead this team. That's
Right.
the extension of what's going on with Teven Jenkins here. And I'll just real quick, Dan, let me answer Steve's question. The best possible compensation, that's tough. I mean, Brad Spielberger, Brad over at PFF, Pro Football Focus, they have a trade value chart with Fitzgerald, Spielberger. They have basically calculated it as last year, Teven Jenkins, the 39th overall pick. There was a trade of a third and a fourth, third rounder and some change. Basically, long story short, is it was the equivalent of a 16th overall pick. That is Kyle Hamilton range, Jahan Dotson in this year's draft. So you are essentially trading away the equivalent of what you spent a 16th overall pick for. The sad reality is that guy has shown 6 games, has shown not a clean bill of health with back surgery needed. And whether it's true or not, there is smoke that the guy is not practicing for whatever reason, injury, immaturity, fitness, doesn't click with the new group. So now you're trying to package and sell that 16th overall pick, 39th overall, if we're not including the trade packages, to get up to 39 to take them.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you my perfect 1 in a million scenario. It probably won't happen. I don't know why the Chargers would be stupid enough to do this. But when I was thinking about teams that would trade for Teven Jenkins, when I think about the teams that you're always looking for that final piece, that piece to push you over the edge. And it's funny because Teven Jenkins hasn't proven anything in the league to be a piece that would push you over the edge. But the Chargers are an example of a team that their biggest hole right now is at right tackle. It's Storm Norton and it's Trey Pipkins. If you already have the trade line open from trading Khalil Mack there, if you could somehow get Tom Telesco to throw you a third-round pick, I'd taken the deal today because I don't know when you're going to get that back. I even have a hard time believing they'd give the third. I think you're talking about a conditional fourth more realistically and probably a fifth or a sixth based on the issues that are there now.
I don't even know what to say to that.
And I'm sorry, I know that was long-winded. It's just this is what I mean. It's very deep and dense in the layers.
No, I know. That's why it was perfect to have you on as my first guest to have this kind of shit happen right now, because this is exactly, you're the perfect guest for this.
It's tough. Like, I mean, Nomad was saying, like, what the hell? Nomad, I'm not trying to be the doom and gloom, man. I mean that. It's just, if anybody knows me, Dan, you know me. I don't know if I put this out there. I was more excited for the Teven Jenkins pick than the Justin Fields pick when it happened. And I know that's crazy. Listen, I love Justin Fields. Nothing against the guy. I'm a line guru. I like offensive and defensive line play. Mm-hmm. And Teven Jenkins is my breed of football player. It's the guy I like to watch. I like the offensive linemen that smash people. And I mean, the reality there is that you're looking at a guy that's hurt today. Like when the news came through, Dan, it was like somebody literally, I'm at Rams camp and trust
me. I know.
I was at Rams camp and I told Diana, my wife, I was like, let's just get out of here. I just feel like I had a gut punch. I don't want to be here anymore. This sucks. That's how much this bothers me.
That's why it's even more to have you as a perfect guest for this, because your background in offensive line plus your love for Teven Jenkins. I mean, some of the things that have kind of bothered me about this, where we're all left speculating to why he's not been in practice, right?
Yep.
So it's not been disclosed as an injury, it hasn't been disclosed as anything. So sadly, kind of where my thought goes on this is I remembered his first press conference of the year. I think it was his only one that he had with the Bears in the beginning of I think it was might have even been OTAs.
Yeah.
And where he was talking about, getting his body fat percentage down and losing weight and doing Pilates and getting his core. And then the other thing that he mentioned was he has to cut down on beer.
Yep.
So now we move forward into where we are now, and it kind of makes me wonder if, I don't know, I'm just speculating. This is just hearsay. This is not even hearsay. This is just my own like brain thinking right now. Is it possible he decided, well, I can drink vodka because that's good for you when you're on this kind of a diet, right? And then maybe he's drinking too much. Maybe he's coming into the facilities hungover, and nobody, they're not going to tell any that they're not going to disclose that. That's awfully personal. Maybe he's coming into the facilities hungover in the morning. Maybe he smells in the morning. I don't know. I mean, these are just. I'm trying to figure out what the hell happened in this time frame that could have caused him to. Was it the decline? Did this happen all the way back from? Let's just say it is related to what I'm saying, and it happened all the way back in OTAs, and they were like, "Listen, you got to get this taken care of." Then they come back and they realize, "Oh yeah, he looks good. He's lost all this weight, but maybe he's coming in a little hungover because he switched to the liquor, because maybe he has an alcohol problem. For all we know, they could be putting him into an AA, thing, and they're keeping it hush hush to try to get his mental health healed, so that when he comes back, he'll be good to go. And maybe they're trying to do that as a team for him. I don't know. And then maybe there's speculation about that throughout the league, and then teams are coming. They're wondering why he's not on the field. Maybe they don't know that. They don't know this. I'm just saying if this is the situation, and then hence the trade talks begin. I'm not gonna sit here and say that that's what's happening. I'm just trying to figure out what in the hell could possibly be happening, because that's the only thing I can come up with based on the talent level that he is. It seems to me like he loves football. Doesn't it seem like he loves football to you, Jordan? I mean,
and that's the hard thing, because I don't mind going into speculation about what it could be. I just want to make sure we're very clear that we don't have any inside information. We're simply positing potential things that could have been barriers for him. But on the surface level, I'm going to just try to talk about some of the facts that we do know, which is that, you're just kind of trying to draw string theory, if you will, from actions that we've seen that have been allowed to where we are now. And for example, there was some concern about, is he not healthy? I find it hard to believe. Listen, you've got Jimmy Morgan there and a few others at strength and conditioning. We've got you in the bod pod. Want to make sure your body weight and body fat percentage is correct. I tend to believe that there's this situation where you wouldn't let that guy participate in a home run derby, and you wouldn't be putting him up on the podium and letting him talk to everybody if you didn't think he was going to be in the plans.
Mm-hmm.
And then somewhere along the line, there became a situation where, and listen, I was the first one, because I'm biased towards Tevin, I was the first one to sit there and say, look, give him the benefit of the doubt. They're putting him in second string because they are really just trying to find the best five. But I would really target that as kind of the beginning of the downfall, the end, if you will, from then to where we are now.
Yeah.
You had a situation where, let's just even go back just a little bit. The whole argument, and Greg Gabriel was talking about this today on his show, but Ifedi was the guy that pushed Teven Jenkins when Tevin went to Justin Fields' defense in the Minnesota game. Ifedi's not here.
Mm-hmm.
Teven Jenkins is. I understand Teven Jenkins as a rookie contract high pick. Naturally, didn't have to make a contract decision with him.
Right.
But the reality is there was an option to keep Ifedi, and you kept Jenkins. And back when Poles was hired, there was a discussion from Adam Johns and a few of the others at The Athletic, Adam Hogue, that was talking about one of the things that Poles really liked was the guy that came to Justin Fields' defense and felt like there needed to be more of that.
Right.
So I would have imagined that at some point they got off on the right foot.
Me too.
And you're putting him out there in the press conference, and he's talking about, look, yeah, I got to get my weight down. I've been drinking a little too much beer, but I'll get it right. I'm working on the Pilates. Maybe that didn't brush them the right way, but look, here's the reality. If Teven Jenkins, if that press conference bothered them, then I would have real concerns about Poles and staff, because you've got bigger issues with Pringle doing donuts and getting arrested in the back of cop cars and everything else to let one press conference ruin your opinion of Teven Jenkins. So somewhere along the line, and this is what Nomad, I think, has a really astute point. The only thing, if we're looking at it, I think we're just trying to deduce where we can pick up things. If we can say that it's not reasonable for Poles to get upset over a press conference, and it seemed like he was pro Jenkins when he took the job,
mm-hmm.
and then there's a moment where he gets put in second string under the guise of we're just trying players out, but then you go the whole period before training camp and he comes back at second string.
Mm-hmm.
The only reasonable, logical position in there is the position coach with Chris Morgan about what was the situation there. And that's the part that we don't know. Could it be that Jenkins, as you said, may have alcohol pumps? Who knows? Maybe. Maybe he said, look, I'm a second round pick and you guys are over here drafting 4 or 5 offensive linemen like I'm not here and this isn't my job.
Yeah.
Maybe he's showing up to camp late. Maybe he's not taking his workouts as seriously. Maybe he's screwing off. We're never going to get to see that. But This is something that, I mean, Nomad's talking about it here. If Chris Morgan's worth his salt, that's the type of stuff you can resolve. And that's the issue I have is we will never likely know what happened with Tevin Jenkins if he is indeed shipped out.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to say, I mean, we all know this. He's the most talented offensive lineman you have in a position that you clearly have identified as a position of need with signing Riley Reef, Michael Schofield, drafting a bunch of offensive linemen in day 2. And this is your most talented guy and you're going to ship him off. I have real concerns. And Mule's saying maybe the agent probably requested a trade. Who knows? But I have real concerns if you as a coaching staff and a regime can't find a way to poke, prod, and coax the best out of your players. Listen, players can sometimes be a real pain in the ass. I'm sure of it. But guess what? We're all managers at one point in our life. You always have tough employees you have to deal with. Sure, sometimes they make it so tough it's better to just say, hey, you go find a new job. I get it. But most of the time, you typically, on the request of HR or otherwise, have to find a way to make it work with that disgruntled employee. And if you're a manager, or as Nomad says, a coach worth your salt, then I expect you to be able to smooth out and iron any issues you have with Teven Jenkins and put him in a position to succeed. And right now, it seems like none of that has been done. And that's really why I'm so frustrated and upset with not just this situation, but in large part, a lot of the process and what we've seen in the early start of this regime under Ryan Poles.
Yeah. One of the things you kind of made a good point about was when he left OTAs as a second stringer. Well, then what happened? They brought in Riley Reef right before training camp started. So they obviously fell out of favor with him, right? I mean, obviously the talent's there, right? My first assumption was bringing in Reef was for backup, right? Like, because if something doesn't work out with we have 2 bookend tackles that we think are going to be good, but we truly don't really know that much about. So the fact that they brought in Riley Reef kind of made me think, okay, well, this is just a backup plan in case Borum doesn't work at left tackle, or I wasn't even honestly thinking Tevin Jenkins. Tevin Jenkins has been in the starting lineup in my head the whole time, but maybe bringing in Reef had a lot to do with Jenkins, or I should say more to do with Jenkins than it did to do with any other tackle position. You know,
it's tough because to me, like I said, and I want to be very clear. I have no connections to the organization. I wish I did. I don't have any inside information. If you're going to hear anything from me, I want to be very clear and on the record that I am much more biased to protect or have the interest of the player in this situation. I really liked Tevin Jenkins as a prospect. I appreciated his pick at the value of the pick more than even the Justin Fields. So anything I say is probably going to be leaning in favor of him.
Absolutely.
And that's my issue, though, is I can't sit here and say, listen, we can understand. He may have problems behind the scenes. Maybe he's so disgruntled and frustrated that I deserve the starting chance because I was a second rounder and he hasn't worked for it. All of that could be true. But the reality is that I just can't sit there and look at it from the outside and not apply some blame to the front office, to the coaching staff to figure this out. And this is just, I don't know, there's been a lot of, this is one issue, but there's been other problems, whether it be Roquan, who still is waiting to get paid, Brisker leading up to the 11th hour. And I get it. No harm, no foul. He got in on time, but trying to get Ogunjobi, then Ogunjobi fails out of the medical, and you're trying to bring competitive players in that have some off the field issues, nothing too big, but you were trying to get in on Brian Allen as your center and then failed out there and had to get Lucas Patrick. It's been nothing but a cloud of kind of, I don't want to say negativity, but just turbulence is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
The entire, and this is what, it's not anything even against Ryan Poles, but you never want that for any regime. And the entire regime from start to finish of what we've seen from start to the current time with Ryan Poles has been turbulence almost throughout the entire way. And yes, keep the faith, bear down. I'm with all that, but it's hard to, when you're sitting there telling me that it's a better decision to hold trade talks for your second round pick that you have as a position of need, that you're literally waiting until the 11th hour to sign a Riley Reef and hope that he's the savior, then finding a way to make it work with one of the most talented players in the league. And I'll end with this before I give you the mic back, is it's the general topic of the N'Keal Harry thing just sticks out in my head. We'll see what N'Keal Harry turns out to be. But the reason why, and you heard me when it first happened, I wasn't in love with the idea of giving a 7th-round pick in the future for a guy that likely would have been cut. But the thing is, without a doubt, who knows? It didn't work out in New England for whatever reason. But when he was drafted, it was a lauded and applauded pick. Because in many, and I pick your favorite draft, Nick. I'm anybody you want. We can go look up the scouting report, and they'll tell you N'Keal Harry was a first-round talent, good pick by the Patriots. Now, your draft pick doesn't matter once you're in camp. It's just a position of where you were taken. Now it's all about proving it. Same applies with Tevin. But that's where the issue lies. I'm okay with N'Keal Harry was at one point considered one of the best 35 to 40 talents in a draft class. The same exact thing applied to Teven Jenkins. And so for you to just decide, for whatever reason of acrimony may exist, that this guy doesn't fit, I just can't jive with that. It doesn't work for me.
Me either, because, I mean, he's only going into his second year of what, a 4-year contract?
Yeah.
You would think they would at least try to get through this year and try to help him with whatever issues he might be having that are causing these, if it's not a physical, if it's a mental issue of any sort or an immaturity issue, which would be a mental issue. You would think they would just be trying to do whatever they could to protect their investment and help that player out as much as they could, put all of their resources into it to keep this guy on the team, to make sure that he matures under your roster and on your salary cap, and you can continue to develop this kid into what so many of us believe that he truly can be. I mean, he is nasty. He fits the nasty mold. Back to what we were talking, you were talking about with Poles coming in. That was the first thing that he described in what he wanted in his offensive lineman is nastiness, and he is the freaking nastiest offensive lineman we have.
I mean,
except for Patrick.
You want glass eaters. Like that's a common term. I wish I could coin that. That's not mine, but you can find that term in many places. The idea of a glass eater, like a dog that eats glass at its food. I mean, that's where it comes from, the idea behind pit bulls. Right. That's what you really want in your offensive line.
Right.
And the reason I was okay with Lucas Patrick and I had joined the ship shortly after he was signed is you can watch the Green Bay tape and watch him taking everybody's lunch and just ultimately planting them into the ground. Tevin Jenkins didn't get that opportunity with the Bears in his first year because of the back injury, because you're not doing padded practices that late into the season. But the reason you selected a guy and he was held in that high of regard, and go through your draft history, go through Twitter history and see how many people are like, how did this Teven Jenkins guy fall out of the first round? He was held in such high regard because that's the type of player he was at Oklahoma State. And he had guard versatility. People said he'd be better as a guard. And he doesn't even find a way into your starting 5 at guard. You'd rather roll out Sam Mustipher and then sign Michael Schofield. This is the process. And I know you didn't bring me on here to talk about this, so I will let you steer the ship. But this is a real issue I have, and I'm trying to keep the faith. But process has been questionable the entire time. And for anybody that may be listening to this now or later, process is different than results. You will never hear me critique results because we don't have any yet.
Right.
Maybe I could be concerned about the process and the Bears come out and they're playoff ready and they're the most competitive, scrappy team you've seen, and they go to the wild card and go into the divisional championship and lose there. Fine. Then I will eat all the crow. But I certainly am not going to apologize for having real legitimate questions about the process from start to finish on Teven Jenkins, on your interest in Larry Ogunjobi, to decide to take 2 defensive backs, to take Velus Jones at 70 and not trade back and see if you could get a guy like him later. It just goes on, and there's a real concern here when your process has so many questions. Are we headed in the right direction? The thing that we've always heard, and maybe it was Adam Johns or somebody that it was at the time of the Sue Campbell firing. There was a belief that we are heading in a particular direction. If you're not going in that same direction, get the hell out of the building.
Right.
And I can respect that.
Right.
At a certain point, how do we know that you're headed in the right direction?
Exactly.
There's so many people, Dan, that want to talk about, let's just trade them and get draft picks. Ask the Miami Dolphins how that went. They were
Right.
so excited to trade away Mika Fitzpatrick for a first-round pick, and we're going to trade away this guy and that guy, and we're going to all of a sudden have 3 first-round picks to select Tua Tagovailoa and Noah Igbenogany and Austin Jackson, and it's done what for them? Draft picks, at a certain point, you have to stick and pick, and you
Right.
have to hit on the guys. And a guy like Teven Jenkins is not one you just move off of.
Right. I think there's at some point you have to realize the picks that what you have invested into these guys, and you may not have invested it in them yourself as the previous regime did, but for what we all are able to view with our own eyes, what this kid could be, it's just, I don't know, man. It's just weird. It's just weird how all of this has just transpired. It's kind of sickening to me. And to your point of, does it make you feel like we're still going down the right road when maybe we did feel like we were? Like, what's going to happen when let's just say they do trade him for what? Give me your best answer again. A fifth, a fourth? Let's just say a fourth, right?
Yeah.
What's that going to do for our offensive tackle position on the team as it stands?
Are you getting somebody as talented as him in the 4th round?
Right. So why wouldn't you just want to try to fix the kid? If there's something, if he needs help, give him help, you know?
Well, because is that not why you're paid? Is that not why you hold the position of a coach or a GM, or, you have this player engagement person in Soup Campbell, and you decide we don't want that. We need somebody who's more mental health focused. Fine. But and I think that they do have somebody in that position currently, but figure out a way to have all hands on deck to protect your investments. And that's the reality, is that you're going to hear me taking the side of defense for Teven Jenkins, but I don't think that the kid all of a sudden decided, screw this, I'm not going to try hard, I'm out of it. It just doesn't. How would that be the case?
Do you think the Soup Campbell thing has anything to do with this?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm never going to sit here. Yeah, for sure, it was the Soup Campbell.
Well, I know, but is it possible? I'm saying, like, did Soup Campbell not handle this correctly in the situation correctly enough after the OTAs, so we wanted to replace him with somebody else?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's certainly not outside of the possibility that, I mean, this is well known documented on record, that Soup Campbell had a lot of valuable relationships with the players on that team. David Montgomery to other players, I'm sure. I mean, was literally, and reporters have talked about this, that he was on the same floor entering Hallis Hall as they would be passing by his office and see players in there. And so all of a sudden, you would imagine that guy probably has some invested interest in every new draft. I mean, you've heard this from rookies that we're talking about. I think Kari Blossomgame was the one that was actually talking about it, that when he came to Chicago, Soup was the one that got him set up in his rental initially, and then looked for further housing in Chicago, made sure they got them all comfortable, family was situated. If that's a guy that's kind of your entry point into the Bears, it's fair to assume that guy's there for your rookie class coming in as well. And he's probably the conduit, if you will, or at least some point or part of that conduit, that when Tevin comes in, needs back surgery, is trying to heal up, trying to get right, understand the plays, understand his position on the team. You would imagine that Soup Campbell had some dealing with that. And I'm not saying that set Tevin off, but I'm sure you don't love it when the people that you've come to become comfortable with are all of a sudden out.
Yeah. For all we know, Soup Campbell was going out and having drinks with him and not knowing that he had a problem, and they were like, we're trying to fix this, man.
Yeah.
Are you hearing that those pings come up on my?
No, I'm not hearing it. You're good.
I'm getting like notifications on my computer, and I can hear them in my headset, and I keep thinking everyone's okay, good.
If I could,
threw me off a little bit.
If I could, Nomad saying like I was unnecessarily taking shots. Nomad, we don't always have to agree. Everybody's allowed to see the game in a different way. I apologize if you think I like all of a sudden have some axe to pick or anything with Ryan Poles. It's not that. And like I said, we don't always have to agree. I just think that for me, I have a real belief in a situation that it's okay to question things. We don't always have to assign blind faith. We're fans. I don't have any control over the Chicago Bears. It's kind of ridiculous. I get so upset hearing a guy would be traded like Teven Jenkins, and it ruins my day from having a good time at Rams camp. That's just who I am. That's how invested I am, just as much as you are, Nomad, and everybody else that's tuning in here. you can have blind faith. You can totally love the Bears. I'm not eschewing that. Do it. I'm not going to besmirch you for it. But at the same time, if I'm going to respect that, I just ask that you respect that I don't have to sit here and just prescribe to everything is perfect for the Chicago Bears and they absolutely hired the right guy and he's doing everything perfect. I'm not saying he's a bad GM, a bad person, just that I'm simply questioning the process so far because I think it's fair, not just to Nomad, but anybody in the chat, you, Dan, as well. I think it's fair to say that from the start of Ryan Poles' tenure as the Chicago Bears GM to where we are today, it has been anything but smooth.
Yeah. Other than the turning 5 picks into 11, that was pretty smooth to me. But he has had some rocky, times with some of the draft issues, or not the draft issues, but the signing of Ogunjobi and losing out on the Bills' offensive lineman,
Ryan
Bates, things like that. So I don't know. It's just, I guess we're just gonna have to stay tuned and see what happens. Hopefully, this is all just a smoke screen. It's just reporting because teams are realizing, like, why isn't he on the field? Let's look into this. Maybe see if we can get a trade for him somehow. That's my hope.
Yeah, well, and I mean, J2K was saying like it's probably the worst time to trade Tevin right now because his value is so low. That's tough. I mean, I don't even know if there's a good time for it because let's just say you wait 2 weeks. If indeed you're trying to trade him, you're probably not practicing him in the interest of making sure he doesn't get hurt. And as time continues to progress along, if I'm a team, I'm questioning, I don't even know what I'm getting with this guy. I don't know what shape he's in. You're not practicing him. I'm hoping that he passes a physical. We're getting closer to the season. Even if he is ready, I don't know how much time I'm going to have to coach him up. Mm-hmm. I would question and think that would drive the price down. You may be interested in taking what's out there now, but I also think you've got to decide what the right value is, and that's what's tough. Is Ryan Poles has no connection to Justin Fields, Darnell Mooney, Teven Jenkins, not in a bad way, just that I didn't draft these guys.
Right.
So at the end of the day, he has his own value of what he thinks a player's worth.
Yeah, I'm sure they were looking at Tevin Jenkins in the previous draft on his board in Kansas City, so he already knows what he thinks of him.
Yep. I mean, they drafted an offensive lineman in the second round, Creed Humphrey. I mean, Tevin Jenkins is already gone, but the reality is they had already filled their tackle spots and guard spots. Right. Joe Tooney and Orlando Brown, and they had Lucas Niang coming back.
Yeah, they just made the trade for Orlando Brown. So yeah. All right. Well, I think that's. I really don't think that. I mean, that's kind of all we can talk about with this. It's just like we'll just kind of cross our fingers and hope that they're going to hang on to him and try to keep investing in him. And
I mean, I'm not telling anybody things that they don't know, but the reality is here it's definitely going to go one of two ways. So buckle up and let's ride one way or the other.
Yeah, let's prepare for the worst because he might be gone in a couple of days.
Yeah, I anticipate that it's going to go one of two ways. He's either going to be moved rather swiftly, and you're going to find out what that value is rather quick, or, and this is what I'm ultimately hoping for, somewhere along the line. I mean, we saw this with Deebo Samuel recently and other players before that have wanted to be traded or wanted out, wanted extensions. I mean, I'll give you two examples. The Deebo Samuel one just got worked out. He got the contract extension despite draft trade rumors from the Jets and everybody else that wanted to acquire him. Then you had the Minkah Fitzpatrick thing where he didn't get along with the way that Brian Flores wanted to use him, and he ended up getting shipped off to Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. It goes both ways, but I think you're either going to see him moved rather quickly, but what I'm hoping is that they find a way to say, hey, how about a fresh start? Can we just start on even ground? Let's just try this. But it may be too far along for that, and we don't know. We're going to have to just wait and see.
Yep, and cross our fingers and hope for the best. I wanted to ask you about a little